Check, mic check. Check, mic check. All right, check, mic check, 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 check. Mic. Who's the mic? I don't know. 1, 2.
A lot of mics.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, mic check. Start the show because it's 1:05 already. Come on now. What's up, Internet? What are you doing? You thought you were going to have to listen to that song. You are wrong. You were wrong for thinking that. You were thinking about it. Yeah, anyhow. What's going on, everybody? It's Friday, February 11th, 2022. That's the year that we're living in, the year of our Lord. Odin, who is our Lord and Savior. Odin, the Oathbringer. Lightning Man. One-eyed lightning man, Odin, the year of our Lord. How you doing, everybody? Hopefully you had a fantastic week. Maybe it rained on you. Maybe it snowed on you. Maybe it was blustery. And maybe if you're down under, apparently it's 1,000 degrees, blazing hot, laser sunbeams right into your eyes, and humid and all that, which... You know, I almost feel bad sometimes for the people that live in Australia because you didn't sign up for it. You were just born there, weren't you? You were just born on the surface of the sun with snakes. As we learned earlier this week, there are over 100 types of specifically deadly venomous snakes in Australia, and that is your hot tip of the week. Watch out for snake bits if used in Australia. That's all I'm saying, right? That's all I'm saying because it's Friday. Snake tips. Hot snake tips if you're here on a Friday. Welcome to the show today. One of the main topics we're going to talk about is going to be HR 4251 or 4521, whatever the hell it is. I can't remember off the top. What is it? 4251, 4521. Is it written in the title? It's probably in the title. So you'll figure it out. You know what I'm talking about. It's already passed the House. It's the Competes Act. It's a giant bill, which, by the way, first and foremost, I need to address something that seems to be wildly misunderstood by most Americans that I've seen commenting on this topic, is that this is a big bill. This is a big giant bill that has to do with jobs. Has to do with jobs and the United States being competitive in the world markets. Why? Why would this clause be added in here for the animals? Well, this is what happens when giant legislation needs to be passed. When a big bill is coming, people add all, and when I say people, I mean our representatives add a ton of legislation to it in order to lump it all together so that it can all get voted on. Something that seems to just disappear from the minds of the average American as they wander around is that there are 350 million people in this country. This country is as big as the European Union. And there's more people in it now that the UK left, I think. I'd have to double check on those numbers specifically. Maybe Alyssa can look them up. By the way, Alyssa's here. She's in the thumbnail. We're going to bring her on in a second, but I don't want her to get lumped into my opening commentary here where I frantically go ballistic. But one of the reasons that this would be added in as a Competes Act is that it does bolster the Lacey Act, which if you are an American consumer, you should be a fan of the Lacey Act and a lot of the amendments that have been added to the Lacey Act to allow American companies in order to compete on an international stage and not have to deal with smugglers, people that are illegally harvesting wood, people that are illegally harvesting fish, people that are operating illegally outside of the United States borders, right, in other countries, because other countries exist also. To not be sending illegal goods and services here to companies that are buying them, right? We would like to have an even level playing field for all the people involved, and if you are somebody who is buying illegal things and things that are illegal in certain states, they may not be illegal in your state, so you import them in, you don't have the proper paperwork in regards to the Lacey Act, but now you send it off to another state. Well, now it's no longer a federal crime. Now it's no longer a federal situation, as the the U.S. ARC guys argued this in the appellate court, right? They took it all the way up to the appellate court. I don't think it went to the Supreme Court. But in the lower appellate courts, they argued this, and they did win in the eyes of the courts. that the federal government can't be enforcing those state-to-state transactions of fish, shrimp, reptiles, wood, all that kind of stuff. And as my friend and your friend, Corey from Aquarium Co-op, illustrated during his live stream on Tuesday, I believe, one of the things that he was talking about is Java fern on wood. And a perfect example is it is become illegal to import wood products with live plants on them directly to Washington State. But as he said, you could just import them into California and then import from California to here. You see how you could easily utilize loopholes if those loopholes aren't closed up, right? Now, for somebody who lives in Arkansas, I can fully understand why you would be wildly upset that, why do I have to operate within the laws that everybody else has to operate? Everything can survive in Florida. If I have to make all the laws, whether or not it could be surviving in Florida, then I have to follow the rules that those states follow, and I don't. Well, the United States Constitution has it's part of our Constitution that you're not supposed to limit and restrict travel in between states, right? Unless a specific law has been invoked in order to restrict travel from state to state for generally important reasons. One of them that's very easy to figure out if you're an average human in the United States is alcohol and tobacco, right? Alcohol and tobacco has to be taxed at a very high rate because of the dangers that it brings to the table as something that exists within our society. I recently, very recently, had a longtime friend that I've known since I was probably 8 or 10 or 12 or something when I was a young fella. As you guys know, I'm in my early 40s. Recently, drank herself to death, even after being well known, having gone to the hospital on numerous occasions, going through liver failure, cirrhotic liver damage due to drinking alcohol, right? Being an alcoholic, drank herself to death. Even under the advisement of all of the doctors, hospitals, constantly going in, blah, 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 still drank themselves to death. Now, one of the reasons I would bring that up is that's an anecdotal, specific example of something that I believe should be legal. Alcohol, correct? I think that alcohol should be legal. It should exist. It should be taxed, it should be regulated, and it should be utilized in an appropriate manner. Currently, in our fish keeping hobby, we have basically no regulations. Yes, there's some paperwork that you gotta fill out, and there's certain import licenses and things like that you have to do. But realistically, right now, most of the rules and regulations are easily navigated around by utilizing loopholes like I import it to California and then I just bring it here. One of the big reasons I want to bring up this kind of stuff is that, yes, nobody wants to be regulated, right? Nobody wants to have to follow the rules. When you're 13 years old, that's a basic argument that you could bring to the table. When you're not an adult yet, you're just in your puberty stage, running around, hormones running wild, and you just don't want to follow the rules. That's a relative argument that you could bring to the table, and I would fully understand that a high school kid who's just basically lived their life under the air quote oppressive regime of their parents or whatnot, right? Just wants to rebel and go do a thing. But when I hear 50-year-old adults that start stomping their feet around and they don't want to have to follow the rules, boy howdy, it really makes me wonder what's going on with the world. What's going on with the world these days, right? One of the reasons that this is a super partisan, air quote, partisan issue, I've heard a lot of people screaming about how the Lib Dems are trying to ruin the whole entire world and blah, blah, blah. Whereas kind of really makes me wonder what the application of that statement, how does that statement come into play when we're talking about a legislation that's going to restrict movement and restrict damage within our natural environment that we all here in the air quote fish fam, the fish fam, we all supposedly really, really care about. Like, we're real advocates for nature, except for when we'd be slightly inconvenienced, right? Right? Really makes me wonder. It's sort of like, oh, I don't want to wear a mask when I go to Costco because I want to breathe on everybody. I just want to be able to breathe on all these strangers out here, right? Why? Why? What is the advantage? What is the advantage? What? No one can explain to me the advantage. What was early on during the pandemic was told to me that you're going to be breathing extra CO2. And I said, well, you got to be kind of a dumb donkey to say that. What about when the surgeon operates on you? What about when the healthcare workers have to wear a mask for 12 hours straight while working the whole entire time? Are they dying? Are they impeded somehow? Oh, well, I have asthma. Okay, well, if you have asthma, okay. Is there something we could do to mitigate that? Well, I won't wear a mask. Okay, is that it? That's the only problem thing that's the only way we could mitigate this? Well, the oppressive government's locking down businesses. Okay, some businesses were closed for a certain period of time. It also paid out to those businesses, obviously not in a perfect way. Because the reason behind that is there's no perfect way that anything could ever be paid out to anybody. If you got a check for $10,000, you start stomping your feet and go, I need a $12,000 check. If you got a $30,000 check, well, I need $40,000 now, right? And so now I'm super mad. And there's a pothole outside. So now I'm mad, right? But no one really seems to care the amount of tax dollars that are expended when it comes down to, I don't know, how about python control in Florida? How much money is being paid out every year to try and just save the Everglades from all of the invasive creatures that are there? I've heard wildly different numbers. I've heard 170 million. I've heard 1.5 billion with a B, right? I've heard all sorts of numbers. But here's what we do know. It's not zero. It's not zero. And we also know it's tax money, right? It's our taxes going into it, right? So it's really easy to levy these criticisms from just this is bad, right? But it's difficult to go like, well, why is it bad? Oh, I don't know, because the future is scary. This is basically what it boils down to. They're going to get us. They're going to get us, and they're going to come in. The Gestapo is going to show up. Like, let's use a whole bunch of crazy, wild language that doesn't even apply to the situation here. The brown shirts are going to show up. Oh, you're evoking the Nazi party now? Okay. The brown shirts are going to show up and steal all your fish tanks? That's what's going to happen? Is that what's going to go on? Yeah, it's very weird. Trust me, they're not looking in your basement for Helen Keller. You know, it's not happening. That's not what's going on. But you know, the biggest issue that I've noticed was I saw a specific comment from somebody who was irate that there would be some level of restriction on their access to certain animals, whilst explaining in the same tirade, like a huge written out tirade, that they're building a lion enclosure on their property. Right? They're building a lion enclosure and then claiming that they've been so like outrageously stepped upon, right? Elephanto King Superb says, can someone get on the Discord and call into the show? Why? Feel free. You can always contact me at any point in time if you want to call into the show. I'll let you call in. But I'm guessing that you probably had no wherewithal to be ready to email or do anything like that, because you probably just want to leave comments very lamely out into the ether. Anyhow, let's bring on our guest today, who is an opponent of the legislation to a degree, but let's hear her out. What's up, Alyssa? How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
I know that you're nervous about it, but let's hear what you got to say.
So my nervousness comes kind of like as a pet owner, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got bristle noses, which are a type of pleco.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, people think plecos, and they think plecos, the big giant things that are killing the manatees and destroying the waterways in Florida.
Right.
And I have undescribed species
Okay.
in my basement. And so I get nervous for my pets, for my babies in the basement. And I don't think somebody's going to come by with like a jug of bleach and be like, I'm going to come down and just bleach all your tanks and just bad, and just kill everybody in front of me and have me leaving in a puddle of tears, in the basement. I don't think that's going to happen. But my actual fear is that there will be a huge like a smuggling market.
Okay.
For things.
Right. Which, here's my first question with that. So let's talk about smuggling. Let's talk about that a little bit. Do we think that smuggling and illegal fishing and smuggled fish, do we think that doesn't exist now?
Oh, no, it does now.
Okay.
I'm just saying I don't want it to become a huge explosive thing.
Okay.
And something that I would have to do in order to continue to.
Okay. So let's say that we recognize that it exists right now. Mm-hmm. To what level do we think it is right now? Do we think it's not very much? Not at all? Do we think most everything that's coming into the States is like checked? We know what's going on with it. We know what's happening.
I don't know if I could accurately speak on that, unfortunately. Right. Like, I really don't know. I know that with the borders being largely closed due to the pandemic, that a lot of like back and forth from Canada has been stifled a lot. But like, I know that there's a lot of people in Canada who are trying to get certain species of bristlenoses or certain not species, varieties that they just like they can't get, and they know that if they were just to drive like 3 hours south, they could get them, right? And that previously they would be able to drive 3 hours south and get them, and then bootleg them up
to Canada.
To Canada,
right? So currently, so in the current world that we're in right now, people would just drive down from Canada and buy fish illegally and then take them across the border. Right. So we know that exists right now.
Yeah.
Right. So we know that even just anecdotally right now, people are illegally taking fish from the United States into Canada, just from that standpoint. Now, do I think that that's extraordinarily harmful? Probably not. It's probably not a big deal, realistically. But,
case by case, it depends on the fish.
But like not, well, that's the whole thing. It's like not a big deal when you do it 100 million times. Suddenly becomes a big deal, right? Yeah. It's sort of like, and one of the things that, it's the death by 1,000. It's the death by 1,000 needle pricks, right? It's just like you get stabbed by a pin once, you're fine. But if thousands of times, you're going to start losing blood, and it's not going to work, right? Yeah. So this is ultimately my point, is that right now there is a gigantic illegal fishery. There's all sorts of illegal fishing that's going on. There's illegal fishing of live fish, of food fish, of trees, logging. All that stuff is illegally being logged and shipped out. Peru has a gigantic problem with that. One of the things that I wanted to document while I was down there was some of the illegal logging that was going on. I had no access to do any of that while I was down there, so I never really made a video about it. But it was one of the things that I wanted to do. We never were in a place where I could have ever talked to anybody about it or interviewed anybody about it or whatnot.
Well, also the illegal logging and that kind of stuff, aren't they especially violent about not letting people down there to see what they're doing?
Who?
The illegal loggers and the gold farmers and that kind of thing. Gold farmers? What? Who am I?
The gold farmers? Well, gold farmers generally are, they're a little bit weirdos. Yes, you could say that people that are operating illegally generally are not the friendliest of folk.
Minors.
Right? Minors? Like people that are underage?
No, the gold miners.
Like minors? Anyhow, so yes, so what you're saying is that like there's pushback from the people that are doing illegal things, which I think everybody sort of understands that like if somebody is behaving in some criminal facility, they generally don't want you around, right? Which may look in any sorts of, maybe they yell at you, maybe they shoot a gun at you, I don't know, who knows? But yes, people that are operating illegally don't want to be caught. That's very true. So one of the big issues with like Peruvian logging that they're illegally doing is that like a lot of it is a paperwork crime. So what happens is that these loggers will go, they'll find trees that aren't supposed to be cut down, right? Then they'll go buy paperwork that says they're going to log this area over here. Then they go log the area over there. All the trees are down. Okay. They put them in the river. They they float them to where they get processed. Then they give them this fake paperwork, right? Then once they give in that fake paperwork, they get paid and then they take off, right? And then it's like, well, where did that guy go? I don't know. He's long gone. So what ends up happening is that the agency that is checking on this stuff, it's all they're GPS marking trees. So when you get this paperwork, you're supposed to be cutting the trees that are on that GPS marker. But here's the big issue. They only have 4 agents that are able to go check on this stuff. There's only 4 people in that entire country that are able to go check on it. And I've actually seen video of them going out and going to because AP did a story on this a while ago, and they actually have footage of camera crew got to go with them and go like look at all these GPS coordinates of trees that were supposed to be cut down. And guess what? They go to those areas and it's like, well, here's a 70-year-old tree right here that has the tag on it. And they're like, where did they log? And then it's like, it turns out, they logged down the river, the stuff that's not supposed to be logged at all. Because if you have like a 60-year-old tree or a 40-year-old tree, you're probably going to get X amount of money, right? But if you cut down a 200-year-old tree, you're going to get más dinero, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big part of what's going on. And so if I wanted to parallel that to a United States issue is there's even a TV show on it now on National Geographic or whatever. They follow around the guys on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington, which if you've ever been out to the Olympic Peninsula in Washington, it's mountains and coastline. There are native reservations there, but it's not heavily populated. There's people, there's some roads and stuff, but it's not heavily populated. And unfortunately, one of the things that continues to happen out there is people illegally logging cedar trees. Right? So these old growth cedar trees, they cut them down, they log them down, they drive them, and then they cut them into shingles is one of the things that they do. That's how you process cedar into lots of money. Is if you have that facility that you could cut shingles, you can make all these bundles, send them off, and make a lot of money. And so they're illegally doing that. And so, but there's like 2 guys. There's only like 2 guys in a police car that like drive around and try and investigate like the trees getting cut down.
Olympic Peninsula.
Right, the Olympic Peninsula is huge.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to drive around and figure out who's cutting these trees down, and then try to gather evidence. Like,
do they at least use like a drone with a camera?
The guys that are doing it are like, nah, I haven't cut any trees. I haven't processed anything in a long time. And of course they're like picking up sawdust and like, well, this seems pretty fresh, bro. Looks like you were cutting trees like yesterday, Oh, no, I haven't cut any trees. I haven't done any of that.
The dust is still in the air, man.
Okay. Well, it's the same situation when you pull up with like somebody who's a drug dealer or whatever. What are they going to just like admit to committing crimes? Like,
right.
No, of course they're not. So it's like the nano aquarium guy says, for the people in Peru that collect fish and sell it for basically pennies, if they are not able to do that because we are not buying, wouldn't they turn to mining or cutting trees for money? Environmentally, wouldn't that be worst? Environmentally, it wouldn't necessarily be worse if that's the word that you're looking for. But here's the deal. So if you're talking about Peru specifically, which I do have a bunch of video footage that I was trying to relay this into a video that I didn't think worked out very well, so I scrapped it, and I'm probably just going to do a, here's what my experience was video. I have a lot of video of going to the places where fish are legally being purchased, where fish are legally being processed and legally being exported, right? What happens to those guys right now? What happens to those guys right now when they're having to compete with people that are illegally fishing and selling fish for pennies on the dollar, right? What happens to those guys? Should those guys be forced out of business because of the current illegal activity that's ongoing right now? Is that what should happen? Because they managed to scrape together enough resources to start a business, to follow the rules, to do the best practices that they could do? Like, should we allow them to be put out of business right now? Because that's what's happening. That's what's currently happening. The illegal fishermen are winning. Like, you realize when you have no margins or whatever, because you're operating outside of any kind of regulatory body, you have no margins. There's nothing you really have to worry about that much because you're just stealing stuff and reselling it, right? Now, the guy who goes out in Peru, gets a permit, has a building, has fish tanks in place, right? Mm-hmm. Has all that stuff going on, is treating the fish as best he can, is preparing them as best he can to get them to ship out, as compared to the people who illegally catch the fish, throw it in a bag, stick it in a UPS box, basically, and then ship it here and hope that they get paid for it. What happens to the people that are doing good practices, right?
Yeah.
What happens?
Well, they get priced out.
Yeah. And it's really easy, for instance, in the logging, it's really easy to price out the competition, right? Mm-hmm. Because if the competition had to go out and do everything legally, right, you're talking about realistically like $1,000 US difference, right? In United States money versus what are they, quetzales? I think quetzales is their money or whatever, or soles is their money. But which is like 10,000 soles or whatever it is, which is like 10 years of income, right? So, what's happening right now is that illegal fisheries are happening as we speak, right? And in America, for instance, that catch 'em all fishing guy,
yeah,
he started his career like catching some fish with a rod and reel, and then catching fish out of just waterways in Florida. Like, you just go throw a net in there and you come out with guppies and cichlids and all sorts of stuff that's not even supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Right? So from a famous YouTube people standpoint, is like, we have people on this platform who are literally profiting off the damage of the environment from the standpoint of a sensationalism standpoint, right? Of like, hey, here's what's going on. Better get some clicks. Better get some clicks off YouTube. But then, I don't know Catch 'em all fishing. I don't know that guy, and it isn't like a criticism of that dude. I don't know. He's probably a reasonable guy. But there is evidence on this platform of people making money off of the deterioration of our environment without any kind of prescription on like how to repair it or do anything, right?
However, you got to think that's kind of a clever way to turn that into your full-time gig. I'm
not mad that somebody makes their living.
No. Of like if he's catching and removing the invasive species,
he just throws them back in there.
Oh.
Yeah. And sometimes
okay, well now I'm upset.
And sometimes he pulls out a lobster out of fresh water, so it's kind of nonsense. But
That is nonsense.
like anybody that has gone to Florida or lives in Florida, like I was gonna try and see if Zip would call in today. I should probably like retitle the channel. Maybe Zip's watching and he wants to call in.
Sometimes he is.
Sometimes he is. But like a good example of things that are going on.
Oh, he's not online.
Is that people, you can just go outside and catch all these non-natives that are out there. Just living outside in Florida. And a lot of it has to do with, yes, a few people being irresponsible. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what I'm told all the time. Oh, what do I have to live in a world where, some irresponsible people ruin it for all of us? And it's like, yeah, you do. Like, because we live in a society. If you want to live outside the society, you can fly down to Peru and just live out on the river if you want. You could go do that. You could actively go do that. To all the libertarians out there that don't want any regulation of anything ever because they trust that there won't be mercury in their drinking water, right? For whatever reason. I don't know why. There doesn't seem to be any evidence to back up any of these complaints. You could leave. Now, these are the people who constantly tell me to leave. You can leave the country if you don't like it. Oh, I can? Well, I mean, you could. You're the guy who doesn't want any regulation, and there are places in the world where there's no regulation, where you could actively go live. You could go live in Brazil. You could go live in Peru. It's not a whole lot of regulation there. They just let you kind of do whatever you want. There's places all over the world where there's no regulation you could go move to, and you're an American. You probably should have some money, right, or something saved up because you've been bootstrapping yourself. You've been picking yourself up by your bootstraps all this time. You could probably
gotta dig up all the buried gold that
Right.
you've got around in secret places like Ron Swanson.
Yeah,
And
exactly. You got to Ron Swanson your way through it. Like, yeah, you want to Ron Swanson your way through it, writing legislation and criticizing legislation and working for the legislators your whole entire life, right? Your entire life's work is dedicated to the thing. Well, I always thought it was funny how people that I've met people that idolize Ron Swanson, the character, right?
oh, I just think he's hilarious.
He is hilarious, but no. I'm saying I've met people that idolize him as a character, and I'm like, I'm guessing you don't get the joke. I'm guessing that you don't understand the joke. You don't understand the joke of the fact that this guy works for the thing that he despises. Like that's the maybe they get it, maybe they don't. I doubt that they get it.
Yeah.
But the reality is that like the actor that plays Ron Swanson is a really cool dude. So it's understandable that you'd be like, well, I really like that guy.
Mm-hmm. He's a voice actor in The Great North.
In the Great North.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a cartoon. It's fun.
Hunter S says a lot of fishermen in Florida just throw back invasives. There's just so many. You could pull up 100 a day. Yep.
I don't know. I feel like if I was a fisherman in Florida and I was pulling up invasives, I would just have like the invasive bucket and I would just be putting them in there.
Right.
But I mean, I just have a lot of buckets though, so I feel like that's easy enough for me.
Aubrey says the Lacey Act protects more than fish. Also, the amendment doesn't say what quantity is minimum, but the fish from Peru are already being imported in large numbers, so they possibly won't be affected. Right. So this amendment in the bill that's being added, it's like subsection 462 or 642 or something like that, 6 something, I don't know. It does highlight in there that fish that are already being imported in what's considered minimum quantities,
more than minimum quantity.
Right. Which people have been regularly going like, oh, well, that's where they're going to get you. It literally describes in there that there is a 1-year period with public input on what those minimum numbers will be, what those minimum quantities will be. And I know that a lot of people are super easy and quick to judge the government for whatever reason as being bad. Oftentimes I talk to people and they go, well, the government's so slow and ineffective. And you go, at what? What exactly is it so slow at and ineffective and things, right? Like, but they don't ever have an example. It's always some trivial, stupid thing that happened to them, like a pothole or a speeding ticket, or it's always something anecdotal that is something you signed up for. By the way, driving a car is something you sign up for. You actually sign a contract. It's not a right. It's a privilege. Maybe you should have read all of the rules to it when you signed the thing at the DMV. It's all listed out there, all of the things that you're supposed to do. And it even says in it you're supposed to be paying attention to, in Washington State, they're called RCWs, as they come up. So the new laws that come up, you're responsible to be knowing them. You sign that. When you sign for your license, you sign to agree to that stuff. And trust me, I'm well aware because I went to court over it in 2004 and 2005. It is a privilege, not a right. Mm-hmm. Driving is 100% a privilege. It's not a right. It's not in the Constitution. It doesn't have anything to do with your constitutional American rights, any of that kind of nonsense that I've regularly heard from people over the years. It is a privilege, right? And also, keeping fish, having aquariums full of water and all this stuff is also a privilege. It's not a right. You don't have a right to pollute the waterways. You don't have a right to do detriment to the people around you. You don't have the right. You don't have. It's not a right. It's not a right to own whatever invasive reptile that you have decided to own. You don't have a right to own a lion and have a lion cage in your backyard, right?
Yeah.
It's a privilege. Yeah, you've got some money and you've got access to a thing. That doesn't mean that you have a right to have access to that, right? Isn't one of the Tiger King people in prison now?
Oh, I don't know. I don't follow them. There's so much nonsense.
I saw clips from that show and there's no way I could have gotten into it. But
if you had the Tiger King in front of me and didn't tell me that that's what it was, or somebody or maybe the Tiger King guy is, I don't know. If you had anybody from that show in front of me, and we were all just sitting there at the table, I would not know that was what I was talking to.
Right.
Because I did not watch it at
but
all.
As you mentioned earlier, it's a big issue that that a lot of fish that we deal with aren't identified.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would love for them to get identified.
Right.
And I know people who are trying to be taxonomists. They're in school getting their PhD for taxonomy and whatever in order to try to do that. And they're like,
I really wanted to interview one of those people. They were hanging around for a while and then they disappeared.
Well, she's got a job that's
those damn doctorate people, they get busy.
Yeah. Well, whatever. Yeah. It's like if you're going for a PhD and you're also working.
What, you busy?
I hardly talk to her anymore. It's crazy. But anyway, so she's trying to get, she's like, I don't even know how I'm going to be able to use my degree because there's only 2 spots in the world that even open up because nobody is interested in fish or ichthyology, taxonomy and stuff unless it's in the marines. And I don't want to do marine stuff. I want to do fresh. And it's just this whole thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one of the big issues that I've been hearing, at least for the last 20 years, from especially the old-timey advocates of this hobby. A lot of people that have been around for years and years, and some of them.
The guys with the legalized arowana shirts?
Yeah. Yes. Have been wildly pissed off for the longest time that things are not identified or even slated to be identified. Mm-hmm. Because there's no money, there's no this, there's no that, there's no motivation to do it. Takes a lot of time, takes a lot of resources, takes all these things. Well, how else are you going to how else are you going to motivate any of that to happen unless it's some form of requirement for essentially business, right?
Right.
Most everything that happens in the United States is motivated through some sort of economic benefit for somebody, right? We're a wildly capitalist country to the point where we can't even regulate our tax system properly, right? We're like, we need to give money to those guys. Jeff Bezos doesn't have enough billions, okay? We got to make sure that he gets more, okay? You know, he's going to take care of us, right? Bezos daddy. The bee's daddy. I don't know how to make fun of him. It's just so. We currently have Lex Luthor and Kingpin, and like all the supervillains are running the big businesses right now. It's just beyond reproach. I don't know.
Yep.
Fishbrella says you're all canceled. Cancel culture for all. Fishbrella, if you could actually describe cancel culture in a cohesive manner, I might agree with you.
Oh, I thought it was because I said legalize marijuana and maybe you misheard what I said.
I don't know. I don't know. My guess would be probably not. Who knows?
Oh, whatever. That's
well,
all
I don't know. I mean, the funny thing is like I always hear like people, people are being canceled. It's like, what are they being canceled for? It's like, oh, Joe Rogan, they're trying to cancel Joe Rogan. Well, how did they try to cancel Joe Rogan? It's like, they made a video of all the times he was saying the N-word on his podcast. And you're like, so they took clips of his show and played them back to back? And people didn't like the content at all?
Of his show?
His show that
yes.
he publicly puts out,
right?
That he also has like essentially an endless amount of resources in order to make that show better, right? You know, because it's easy to criticize Joe Rogan because he has the availability, right? He has the availability and the resources to correct his terrible behavior, right?
Well, and
all
the things that he says are recorded and on screen. You can see the words. You can see his mouth making the words.
And the thing is, like, if you really wanted to cancel Joe Rogan, put together all the clips of him screaming at people and getting in fights at bars and stuff all the time, right? Corvus, you got people out there identifying as being dead. What? What? What is that?
I have no idea.
What?
Are you talking about goth people?
I don't. What is that comment supposed to make? I'm like, hey, put together a cohesive statement about what you think cancel culture is, and the answer was, Corvus, you got people out there identifying as being dead. LOL, smiley face, crying face. Like what? What am I supposed to do with that? Is this how you have conversations with people that you know? Like when you talk to other human beings that are in the room with you? Okay, whatever.
I'm just like I can just imagine all the like goth friends I have being like, yeah, you know, sometimes.
Yeah, I don't even know.
When I got the right makeup on, you know, we're going to the club and.
Aqua Blue Bear says, don't know much about it, but would the tightening of regulations lead to better quality of fish in the hobby? Like stopping diseased fish entering the country? Actually, this is actually a really good point, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because I've heard a lot of people from the EU, right? I've heard a lot of people from the EU saying, like, oh my God, what is America doing? What are you guys doing? That's crazy. Like, you guys are doing some kind of crazy law. Because they actually haven't read the law, and they probably haven't read the law, and they probably are so acclimated to the laws that they operate under currently that it seems like, wow, what are they doing over there, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas the EU has wildly more restrictive laws than the United States as far as importing, exporting, animal care, to the point where, like, if you are selling sick fish, it can escalate to the point where you can be sentenced to prison and lose your business. Like, and it's really not that difficult. You really have to take care of the animals that are in your custody. It's a really interesting situation to see, like, Europeans going like, oh my God, you guys are going to be restricted to death. It's like, we currently basically have no restrictions. Like, because as I illustrated earlier in this live stream, you can navigate around any kind of restriction in the United States because, oh, I guess I can't import it in Washington. I guess I'll import it in New York, and then I'll import it from New York.
Right.
Right?
Or have it
or
shipped.
I'll have them send it to Florida first and then send it here.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll have them send it to Texas first and then send it here. Or I'll
Right.
just import it in LA and then send it here. And one of the things that I've consistently been trying to argue with people since the Build the Wall campaign came along, which, by the way, if you guys aren't familiar with Pink Floyd, like, go familiarize yourself with Pink Floyd. Those guys have been essentially
There's a whole movie called
the argument against building a wall. And it's literal. It's literal and figurative, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, since the
So
argument
that was done
along that
before the Germany wall came down, right?
70s, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So it would have been like right before.
Right. But
Germany wall.
The Germany wall. The Germany wall.
I'm so great with words today.
Dost-
oh my god.
Dost thou hast a Germany wall? Yeah. So
Please let me visit Germany one
Um,
day.
but one of the things that I've noticed is just how much better the hobby is in the EU as compared to the States. I've come to that conclusion many times. You've heard me say it many times, for sure. To the extent of going to wholesalers in Europe, to going to hobbyists places in Europe, to going to competitions in Europe, to going to conventions in Europe, and just the level of care is that much higher. I've illustrated that from some videos that I put out that even just the planted tanks that you see in stores are better quality than you would see from somebody who's like a huge aquascaper in the U.S., like on their own tanks that they're constantly working on. Like, just the ones in stores there are better quality than the ones that you see here, right? And a lot of that has to do with you know, the regulations that are in place in order to protect A, the environment, B, the consumer, C, the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of the things that's kind of weird that I see in the U.S. is that if a regulation gets put into place, the businesses are going to be damaged by it, right? And you're like, in what way are the businesses going to be specifically damaged? Oh, they're going to all go out of business.
They might have to
Okay.
revise how they do business.
Wait, so all the businesses are just they're gonna go under? Or they're all just gonna close? Okay. Why? Because they're gonna. Okay. Well, you know, it's like arguing with a 5-year-old at that point when you try to have a conversation with somebody and you're like, huh? Like, how do we potentially move forward where, you know, one of the things I was asking Zip about was the to some articles for how bad the python situation is in Florida, right? And the reality is, like, the python, what is it? The ball python. So I had these open, and then my computer crashed because, yeah, here it is. So the program details an hourly rate, $10 per hour and $15 per hour, depending on the area, for up to 10 hours each day while actively searching for pythons on designated lands. So you make between $10 and $15 an hour to go hunt for pythons, up to 10 hours a day. An additional incentive payment of $50 for each python measuring up to 4 feet.
Wow.
An additional extra $25 for each foot measured above 4 feet.
That's
So
a pretty decent.
a 5 foot is 75, a 6 foot is 100, a 7 foot is 125, an 8 foot is 150, and also being paid like $15 an hour. Which, by the way, everyone, all the libertarians would be crazy irate about somebody making $15 an hour. I think we've all seen that, haven't we?
So then, like, could you go to the bank if you had decent credit and you lived in Florida, kind of near the Everglades, and you just needed to get like a swamp boat, like one of them shallow bottom swamp boats or something like that, so you could go in and
get
go
some
hunting.
pythons?
You could go to the bank and just get like a
What's
quick
even
loan
funnier is that you
and
get
be like, it's for my business.
an additional $200 for each verified active nest.
Ooh.
Right?
And obviously you would collect the nest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we shall collect the nest for $200.
Yes.
And even just this program, I saw some numbers on this that may or may not be verifiable or whatever. But over it was either a 10 or a 15-year period. They've spent $170 million trying to mitigate these pythons, right? And you're like, how's that going? And they're like, not good. There's more of them, even though we've spent all this crazy money to try and get them. But it's literally Ted Nugent with a machine gun just flying around in a helicopter shooting pigs and just going like, this is going to curb their enthusiasm, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know. It's not. You're just being an idiot at this point, right?
Yeah. You need those duck hunter guys to quit their jobs and become python hunters instead.
The duck hunter guys? What duck hunter guys?
The duck dynasty guys?
Oh, those guys just sell accessories for duck hunting.
Oh.
They probably don't actually hunt duck. I mean, maybe they have or do, but that's not their thing.
Oh.
Their thing is that they're a business that sells stuff.
Oh. Well,
like
then
duck calls and
never mind.
Shirts and swag and
again,
stuff
it's
like
another show I've never actually seen.
I've
I
never
just
actually
figured
seen
they're
it, but
like
I've seen snippets of it, and it's
bros
really
that
just a
look
stupid.
like-
It's a stupid reality show.
I just figured it was bros that kind of look like ZZ Top, but in different clothes.
I wouldn't associate with any of those people personally.
Well, no.
Yeah, they have pretty terrible takes on things.
Yeah, well, yeah.
A lot of it associates with the being literally brainwashed by your religion.
Yeah.
Realistically,
Mm-hmm.
which I know a lot of people get mad at me because I'm not a specifically religious person, but let me try to explain a bit of my take here. Historically speaking, a big part of the reason that, for instance, the king, right, the king of England was so happy to get sort of Protestant style religion becoming the official religion, right, was that this was a doctrine that promoted this hard work ethic, this whole idea that you toil the entirety of your life in order for you to receive the reward of a better afterlife once you pass away. Like, you're going to go to heaven. It's going to be fantastic. Jesus is going to be there. All the people that you like are going to be there. It's going to be great. You're going to get to live a happy, fulfilling afterlife, right? Which is kind of interesting to me because why would the king be endorsing this ideology for the people, right? Now does it
why would that be?
Does it maybe correlate on the point where they don't actually have to pay anything out, right?
Because that doesn't make sense.
Well,
trickle down economics, bro.
Well, none of the reward actually has to be paid out by the king. Right? It just has to be paid out, and once these people have deceased, right? They're no longer alive. Then
you work until you drop down in the field, and then they bury you in the field to propagate the next crops next year.
And then you get your reward, which doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be any of the worldly items in which, like Joel Osteen,
Yeah.
has a, a 20,000 square foot house with private jets and Lamborghinis and all this kind of crazy stuff, right?
Jets plural.
So the Osteen family doesn't actually have to pay out anything worldly because they're giving you the gift of this imaginary thing that they can't verify
Yeah.
as an actual item or experience that you're going to experience, right?
Yeah.
That there's no real way to prove because it's this ethereal idea, right? That
Yep.
after you're dead, which, realistically, we've never really had anybody come back to let us know like what it's all about. But it's kind of strange how the Jesus guy was the only person that's ever died and then come back, right? Is that like a weird coincidence? Is that a weird coincidence that's going on there?
I mean, didn't he raise that guy Lazarus from the dead?
Maybe.
I think so. That's what he was supposed to have done in the book.
Did he tell him all about it?
I don't know.
Rich rewards in the afterlife, right? But the king doesn't have to pay those out.
Right, no.
At all.
Mm-mm.
Which is essentially Jeff Bezos, right?
I don't.
It's the Bezos doesn't have to pay it out right now.
Right. He just makes you have to pee in a bottle.
You got to pee in a bottle. Hey. Yeah. Now, look, I'm not here to criticize anybody's specific religion. I'm not here to ostracize anybody if you have a specific religiosity that brings some kind of benefit to your life. I'm not here to do that. That's not my goal, and that's not my aim. But I find it odd. I find it to be a very odd situation.
Right.
I don't know how it really paralleled into anything that we were talking about, but
Oh, because we were talking about Duck Dynasty.
Oh, Duck Dynasty.
And they're weird.
Yeah.
They're weird viewpoints.
Weird creeps. Joel, you been to the indoor aquaponics farm in Eindhoven? I went to an indoor aquaponics farm in maybe Eindhoven. I don't know where we went. But I do have video of being in the Netherlands and going to an indoor aquaponic farm. I don't know how well it's doing at this point. I don't specifically know. I could probably look it up and see how well they're doing. At the time, they were fairly startup-ish. They were kind of 1 year, maybe 2 years into operating, so they weren't like a full-blown gigantic operation. They were pretty mom and pops at that point, which ultimately actually was a pretty cool experience because one of the things that they do there is they were tied in with basically the government was supplying supplemental income for the people that would volunteer to work there, because most of the people that volunteered to work there were handicapped to some facility, right? Like mostly mental things. And I don't want to say oh, it's some autistic character. I don't know what their specific ailments were, so I don't want to describe one of them in some way. You know what I mean?
They were giving opportunities to people who had different abilities.
Right. They had people that had mental issues.
Different abilities.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then they were supplementing their pay. So it was like they could come and work there without, I guess, I don't know. It's just it was a synergistically beneficial environment for not only the people that were working there. It gave them something to do that they probably weren't qualified to do, but also it wasn't like this incredibly stressful environment where they needed to produce and or get fired because of that subsidy essentially that was put into place.
Right.
It's the thing is, if you're paying somebody $50 an hour, for instance, to do something, you're like, they better be good at it, right?
Right.
But if you're paying somebody 20 of the 50, you're kind of like, they could be a little slower. It's all right. It's not a big deal. We don't got to be super stressed out about it or whatever, right?
Right, yeah. Because it's a little bit less on the, ROI.
Oh, my God. Xanadudu's here.
Hey, man. How's it going, Xanadu?
Thanks for the stream. Oh, my God. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome, and you're welcome to all the members. We actually have some new members. We lost some members. We don't know what happened to them. and we're not gonna even speculate. We're not gonna speculate what happened to those.
They got
members.
lost in the stream, man.
They got lost in the sauce or something. I don't know where they went. But Hunter S joined 4 days ago.
Nice.
Cool Bus is a new member whom I haven't seen in the chat today, and Richard Volman is new. We got 3 new members, but we lost 3 members. So it's a very weird conundrum that we're in because the number is still 72.
We didn't have to fight around with the number thing.
Yeah, we didn't even need to change the number. We didn't need to update it.
Yeah.
We did lose some patrons, but realistically, on the exit interviews, it seems like people were going through life changes, lost jobs, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So super bummer. Hope you guys and gals recover rapidly, find some new employment, get a new place to live, whatever, get all that stuff figured out. My best wishes go to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, I fully understand. If people are like, hey man, I hate you and I don't want to patronize, I don't want to sponsor your content. I'm like, okay. And then also they're like, hey, I don't have a job anymore. It's like, oh, okay. You know, I mean, I wish you the best. I wish everybody the best.
There's Zip.
There's Zip Gun. Oh my God, is he gonna call in? Let's see if Zip Gun calls in. I've got
But
the chat
first-
open if he wants to talk about snake invasions or invasive species in Florida.
But first, S says Corvus. You know about the sauce?
I know about the sauce. Which sauce?
I don't know.
The
Just
sau-
all the sauce.
The sauce?
Didn't you used to do chefing?
I know about Sauce Bousen. Yeah, I know about that. I know about being the Sauce Bouse. I know how. I can. I will. If I need to. I'm currently right now teaching Victoria how to make spaghetti sauce, otherwise known as tomato-based marinara, from scratch. Did you smell it when you came in? Did you smell the smells?
I smelled something.
Yeah, you didn't know what it was.
No.
Now you do.
Oh, okay.
Now you're in the know.
It smelled nice.
You didn't know, and now you do know.
I did.
Oh my God, pasta sauce.
I
I
don't
know. What sauce am I supposed to know about, S? I love you to death. S is like the least acknowledged name. Like, S's name carries the least amount of acknowledgement. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. Because you're just like, it's just the letter S, and you're like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on. The other day, Dr. Black was like, oh, S is a guy. And I was like, what? How do you know? I just imagined like some
Amorphous
human shape that's just like, I don't know.
It's just like,
it's asexual. It's
Yeah.
the letter S.
like,
I mean, considering it's the letter S, it's a little of the sexier letters, right?
yeah.
You know, it's got some curves. It's got some shape to it. It's got some body, right?
Mhm.
So I was the amorphous human.
But it's also sinewy and flexible.
That's right. Yeah, it's got moves. Knows how to wiggle. Knows how to bring the wiggle. But yeah. Anyhow, sorry. I digress. I don't know. We'll see if Zip calls in. We never know. We never know if Zip's going to call in or not. We'll find out. It seemed they have invasive chickens when I was in Kauai.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Michael Sarr, as a perfect example of an invasive mammal that they're just trying to deal with, is the hen population, the chicken.
Did you just call a chicken a mammal?
Is it a reptile?
It's a bird, man.
What's a bird? Yeah.
It's an avian.
I guess they're not a mammal. They lay eggs and have feathers. Well, whatever. I don't know, man.
They're
Sorry, I misspoke.
tiny dinosaurs.
Okay. I'm with you. Yeah, sorry I misspoke. I'm canceled now. Alyssa's canceled me.
I just
I've
canceled
been
him.
canceled. Oh, my God. Guys, how am I going to recover from this? It's a good point. God, there's no coming back. Should probably just throw myself off of a cliff.
But when I was in Oahu, when we drove all around, like half of my photos from Oahu are just pictures of the like chickens.
The chickens? Yeah.
It's like, dude, look at that rooster.
Mm-hmm.
Look
They're
at that one
everywhere.
right there.
They're everywhere.
This one's coming up to me. That's a little scary. I'm going to close my door.
But pigs are mammals, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they're invasive there too, along with other things that have gotten loose.
Monkeys.
But I think one of the big things that I wanted to highlight to people is that the average American experience doesn't relate in any kind of way to realistically experiencing the damage that invasive species are doing to the environment. The average American is getting up in the morning, getting ready, taking a shower, getting dressed, getting in their car, driving to a workplace, doing a work function all day, getting in their car, driving home, being in a insulated, heated, plumbed. They got water, they got electricity, you got internet, you got all this stuff. You're not outside like interfacing with the river trying to figure out why you don't have food now.
Right.
Right? And so it is impossibly easy to ignore the damage that is going on as an American. You know, you drive on the freeway over past Lake Union, for instance, in Seattle. You drive past Lake Union from the freeway, you're looking at it from 1,000 feet away. Oh, there's some water over there. Now, when I was a kid, you couldn't even swim in Lake Union.
Yeah, because it's gross.
No. It's not that it was gross.
Oh,
it's
really?
that it would make you sick, and you would probably die from all of the mercury and poisoning and all the things that were in there. You couldn't eat fish out of there. You couldn't do anything in that lake. As a matter of fact, there were signs all over the place like, don't even touch the water.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which is, in my mind, gross is an ascription of like, oh, there's some poop over there or something. You know what I mean? Like, oh, gross. Right? Like toxic chemicals to me that have like destroyed the habitat is not necessarily like just gross in my mind. I'm like, you know, if you have like radioactive waste, it's not like, oh, gross. It's like, oh, no. You're going to die now. Like, that's basically how that goes, right?
Right. I realize that was a simplified and downplayed sort of term.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm not trying to bite your head off or anything. But yeah, but I mean like most Americans' response would be like, "Oh, gross. Damn it." You know, like, "Ew. Let's get out of here."
Right.
You know. Because it's very easy for Americans to just go like, "Ah, darn it. There was a hurricane in Florida. Tomatoes got more expensive. I guess I'm just going to buy more expensive tomatoes, right?"
Right.
Like it literally got to a point. Zipgun had mentioned that I probably didn't realize how much, whichever hurricane it was. I think it was Hurricane Harvey. I don't remember exactly which one it was. That destroyed. I think the number was like, what was it, 100,000 houses or something crazy like that. Like it just ripped through Florida, which is one of the points when snakes got out, right? And is one of the points where people go, oh, this is when the invasives got out,
right?
Because there was a hurricane. And it's like, well, who would have known there would have been a hurricane? And you're like,
it's Florida.
In Florida, who would have known that there would be
during a hurricane season?
Everyone would have known that there was a hurricane. It's like traditionally
right
where the hurricanes go. Like
right.
That's what they do. Like hurricanes are like, hey, Florida, what's up? I'm coming over there. Like,
and there was a snake and reptile breeding facility right there that got destroyed, and there you go.
And then they got out.
Yep.
And you go like, oh, well, just because this one facility got attacked by a hurricane, it's like, well, the hurricane didn't attack. Okay? Like,
it just was.
The hurricane showed up because that's what hurricanes do. That's the weather pattern that we know. And you go like, oh, well, they weren't prepared for it. And it's like, but why weren't they prepared for it when it's a known situation, right? Oh, we didn't really think that they would get out. Oh, Hurricane Andrew. Yeah, not Harvey. Now, from my end, when Hurricane Andrew came through. From my end, we couldn't buy tomatoes anymore because at that point in time in the year, the hurricane supply, or not the hurricane, the tomato supply was coming from Florida.
The hurricane supply was also coming from Florida.
Yeah. Excuse me. I had a little catch in my throat, and then I started talking about hurricane supplies. But because the way that the global food supply works is that as the year goes along, it moves from area to area as harvests come up, right? Like, that's where stuff is going to be coming from. Well, at the time, the only market that was going to be tomatoes for that, like, 1.5 month period was from Florida.
Right.
And a hurricane came through and just decimated all of the tomatoes. And you go like, okay, well, I'll just order tomatoes from somewhere else. And they go like, well, no one is harvesting tomatoes right now. So there are none. They're all out in the ocean or wherever they got blown to or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So at the time, like a good example would be we had to put all these amendments on our menus that was like, if you want tomato, you have to tell the server because we are not giving you a tomato for free, sort of thing, right? Like if you get a hamburger, it's not going to have a tomato on it unless you specifically are like, I want my tomato, then we'll give you one.
Right.
Because of how many because realistically, when you throw a slice of tomato on something, people throw it away half the time. Like they just, trust me,
ungrateful.
Running restaurants for so long, like your compost program has got to be on point because how much food Americans throw away. First off, restaurants give them too much food and then they throw it away.
Right.
Like, and that's just like an American thing. Where you're like, I get lots of food and then I throw a bunch of it away, like, because whatever, right? And if you're running a restaurant, if your compost situation is not on point, how much you're going to be paying the garbage people to throw it in the dump will destroy your business, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny, like I don't like pickles.
You don't want them pickle?
I don't want it.
It's a delicious cucumber.
No. It was a delicious cucumber, and then somebody went and rudely soaked it in vinegar and spices.
Are you talking about sweets? Are you talking about sweets or dills?
All of them. Anything that has been soaked in vinegar until it no longer resembles what it used to be. I do not like it. It's not my thing. But
it's weird. It's just weird, like how wrong you are about that.
But I like the dill spice. Mm-hmm. So I've come to enjoy when they put the dill pickle on and then I take the pickle off, but there's that little bit of flavor left, and I like the little bit of flavor, but I do not like biting through that gross, disgusting, squishy thing. It's like...
It's so weird how, like, violently wrong you are about how pickles are delicious. It's weird.
It's
weird, like, how radically wrong you are.
I know. I'm usually right about so many things.
Yeah. It's pretty good. I have a rose ring parakeet that lives in my neighborhood. I see 20 to 30 a day. It is believed there are about 10,000 plus, and it all started when a storm damaged someone's aviary 30 years ago. Yep. And the funny thing is, like, one of the reasons that I kind of want to bring it up is that most Americans are completely unaffected by the environmental damage. I mean, it just really is what's happening in the States. And it has been happening for like a really long time. And it's obviously one of the reasons that I get so frustrated that people go like, I don't understand why it's political and you're political and you talk about politics and this and that and the other thing. And it's because of issues like this where a total lack of education, a total lack of generally most Americans having like no experience outside of the U.S. Or other cultures from outside of the U.S. or experiences that other people are having outside of the U.S. that sort of creates this really like insulated logic around, well, I'm responsible and I can do whatever I want because I'll be fine about it. And it's like, I get that people like have that opinion about themselves, but it's not necessarily true. Like, you just are having an opinion that you're going to be responsible. But like a good example would be with the seatbelt laws. I don't know if you guys there are any people that are old enough that watch this show. I'm personally not old enough to remember when seatbelt laws came into play. There were giant protests about it, right? And it didn't even really have anything to do with the average consumer. It literally just had to do with car companies having to put seatbelts into cars because just the fact that how much safer it made it for people that wanted to wear a seatbelt while they drove around, right? Mm-hmm. And not get crashed into by drunk drivers because the drinking age was 18 back then.
Yeah.
And there were way more drinking and driving accidents, right?
I mean, I remember when the rear seat in a car only had a lap belt, and that was it. It didn't have a shoulder belt in the rear seat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I always tried to point out to people that would always argue about seatbelt laws, because I remember when the seatbelt law became a fine in Washington State. So I was around when that happened. When it became a requirement that you had to wear a seatbelt if you were driving around. You just had to wear a seatbelt if you're in a car. Otherwise, you could pay a fine if you like. Cool, I guess. Whatever. It's very weird to me, but it's very weird that people wouldn't want to wear a seatbelt, and the fact that like you probably are going to get in an accident someday, even if it's not your fault. Statistically speaking, someone's going to crash into your car. Pretty much how it works.
Right. I don't understand how you can be comfortable doing that. Like, I feel like I'm sliding around if I don't have my seatbelt on.
True.
But that's me.
But the thing that I wanted to relate is that people go like, I don't understand why I could get a fine. I'm just taking my own safety into my hands, right?
And anybody else in the car, and yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it's an individual's decision. If you really don't want to wear a seatbelt, you can choose to not wear a seatbelt, right? Even if you're like, hey guys, put on your seatbelts, and somebody's like, no, I'm like, well, I'm not going to get in a fist fight over it. You know what I mean? Right? I mean, maybe you are willing to get in a fist fight if a passenger in your car doesn't want to wear a seatbelt, like an adult.
Oh, well, I just won't go until they put it on.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But if they decide that they're going to fight you over it or something, are you just going to like fight them?
I won't fight them, but I will kick them out of the car. And
yeah,
I've done
but
that
what
before.
if they refuse to get out? Then you'll physically fight them?
I'm not sure.
All right. That's what I'm saying. I'm not willing to physically altercate with people because I know how physical altercations go down. I've been in them before. And I'm just like, I'm not willing to do that. I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. Do what you want in the back seat back there. Keep your pants on, weirdo. You know?
Yeah.
I'm just saying from my standpoint because I've thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just never occurred to you. But I have thought about it like a weirdo.
I literally would, and this, as I've never had somebody try to physically get into a fight with me over it, but I have gotten out of a car before and just turn the car off, get out of the car, because I always drive.
Right.
And just been like, look, man.
You got to wear your seatbelt.
You're not going to be the one that gets me a ticket because you're not putting your seatbelt on. Just know.
Oh, but if they're over age, they get the ticket, by the way, just so you know.
Well,
just
I don't have to tell them that.
Just as a piece of advice.
These people don't know
if
that.
If they're underage, you get the ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow.
Anyway.
My whole point is I'm not going to like physically restrain somebody to the point where it's like, but that does make sense. Mm-hmm. That's sort of confrontational. I don't know.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, the whole libertarian argument is that you shouldn't be charged monetary for not wearing your seatbelt. But my point is that we go, if you get in an accident, statistically speaking, you're going to be much more injured if you're not wearing a seatbelt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which then suddenly incurs the cost of police, fire department, EMTs, transportation of your body to the hospital. Maybe you don't have any money, so now the hospital has to heal you because we have legislated that, right? You can't just not treat people at the hospital, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's tax money, right? All this stuff is all tax services, right? And so, like, why should we have to pay out more of our taxes because you refuse to be a little bit more safe? And it's the
Right.
same thing with the helmet law. That's why motorcyclists have to wear a helmet, because when they get in accidents on the freeway, they're like, we have to deal now with the dead body,
Yeah.
right? Which means we got to like close the road, which inconveniences everybody else, which stops businesses from operating properly because now everybody's late to work because the motorcycle guy didn't want to wear a helmet, right? And you go like, yeah, but I could be free on my motorcycle. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you are free to roam about on your motorcycle, but it's also a privilege because you're dealing with society in society. Like, you're on the freeway. You're supposed to follow the rules. The rules are there so that everybody knows what everybody else is doing, right? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer S's question really quick. Do fish need seatbelts? I
Yes.
don't know about that specifically, but when I am driving my fish around in their little cooler, I do, in fact, have a way to buckle them into the seat so that if I have to stop suddenly or something, the cooler doesn't slam forward into the front
snap.
dash.
Zip's on the call.
What?
I went over to the Discord because I was trying to find your old picture of the fish seatbelted into your car.
Oh, yeah?
And I was going to say, yeah, fish need seatbelts. Alyssa puts them in the seatbelt when she's taking them.
In fact, when I take my cat to the vet and I put her in the carrier and stuff, I buckle her in too.
Yeah.
Because, I care about my pets.
Zip's in the chat, but he's muted. He's muted himself. We'll see if he comes on. Just start yelling, Zip, if you wanted to talk about, what do you call it? Florida. Florida. Hey, there he is. Uh-oh. Oh, there you are.
I'm here.
Okay.
Yep.
What's going on in Florida, man? That was one of those things that, because I don't have any specific like interactions with, environmental damage in Florida myself. Everything I just have to like research it and take other people's word on it. But from your kind of specific interactions, like, what kind of opinion does it bring to the service for you?
With the Everglades, apparently it has led to a really significant loss of natural fauna. A lot of the populations have been significantly injured by the invasive species of the Burmese pythons, the python hybrids, some of the monitor species and tegus that have also, and these are all, pet trade. These are not, a lot of people try to say, well, lizards and things like that, they come from agricultural imports, things like that, which is absolutely true. But those are mostly smaller species and have, in general, much, much less of an impact than the bigger ones that we generally want for the pet trade.
Right. And I remember you were talking the other day where you had some sort of like specific interactions and whatnot of, I guess like where do we start in order for people to have like a realistic understanding? And it's this monumental amount of funds that go into trying to clean up pet trade animals that have gotten loose and started to reproduce.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's ever broken down pet trade for others, but the economic impact from, numerous studies is like billions annually. And I think the danger for the pet trade, I'm not saying this is someone that's against the pet trade by any means because I'm making a living from it, is that if we're pitting ourselves against other industries and they're having, billions of dollars of impact, we're likely going to lose.
Right.
But if we try to figure out, well, what's the most onerous, what's the worst parts of these legislations, and let's laser focus on those and try to figure out how do we mitigate the negative impact of that versus, oh, I hate it, it's government regulation, government overreach. Well, you're coming from a hobbyist or from someone like me in the trade that's not affected. If I'm a farmer and I'm having problems with crops because of a parasite or something that's come over. It not regulating is affecting their livelihood.
Right. Well, and I think like you bring up the parasite issue and stuff like that, and me living in Washington, logging is a perfect example, and it's one of the reasons that wood imports and all that stuff is so heavily regulated, is that if you release something into the environment here, you're talking about an endless sea of devastation when things get into the forest here, because we do have so much interconnected forest, in the fact that we have large swaths of federally maintained land here to maintain the environment.
Oh yeah. Hey, just think. We all think of the Christmas Carol about chestnuts roasting on the open fire. Have you ever had a chestnut?
Yeah.
I haven't. Most people I know have never had. That's because the chestnut population of trees was devastated by a blight and has never recovered. I mean,
right
now it's starting to come back maybe a little bit, but they've been working on this for decades. What would happen to the timber industry if a blight hit those forests?
Right. And I've actually seen specific instances here when we've had disease, we've had beetles, we've had numerous different times. And one of the times we went out because it was at an accessible point where you could go and you could actually look at it, and you realize this giant swath of the forest is all dead. And now you have an even bigger problem on your hands, because you have a giant stretch of land that has dry wood on it, and it's going to get hot, and it's going to get summertime. And it's all, I mean, if you've ever experienced throwing some dead wood onto the fire, it goes up like crazy. And now you're dealing with a forest fire, because you've got diseases and certain things that were almost impossible to try and do something about it, with these services that can't handle this level of sort of like periodic peak performance, right? It's sort of like, oh, hey, normally we only need like 5,000 forest workers, right? Or whatever the number is. And then all of a sudden we need 500,000, right? To try and stop this giant disaster that's happening. And those people don't exist. There's no one to bring on board, right? And this happens every year here. And I think it from how long have you lived here? Like 5 years? 10 years? 20 years? 100 years? 500 years. 500 years, I'm guessing. 15 years.
It'll be 16 actually pretty soon.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So you've been here long enough to know when it's like, oh, it's normal summertime. Cool.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, now it's smoky summertime. And you're going to oh, I don't have asthma, but now I have asthma for a week. Right?
We haven't had Apocalypse Now every summer for very long. It's only been like a few years, but it's becoming a regular every year thing.
Well, I can say it's as frequent now as it kind of was when I was a kid. The forest fires, it's more where we live is only directly affected depending on the weather pattern, because we have offshore wind that blows from the Pacific Ocean and normally heads that way east. But Eastern Washington every year is on fire. It's just everything is fire notices. Don't burn. Don't do anything. Don't do this. Don't do that. No. Because last year everything burned down and we rebuilt it, and we're not going to burn it down again.
Right.
And everything's a lot like that. And so one of the big reasons that certain things need to be regulated, and one of the reasons that I say that is that there are a lot of Americans that they don't interface with nature realistically at all, even remotely in your day-to-day life. If you're somebody that lives in an apartment, you drive a car to go work at a retail store, you drive the car home, you live in your place, your reliance on nature, you are so far removed from it on a normal day-to-day basis that anytime some kind of regulation comes in, it is very easy for you to have a super knee-jerk reaction to it. And a good example, I think, right now is how many people have freaked out over gas prices going up. Right?
Yeah.
It's a huge bummer, and I think it's a bummer big time. And it puts a lot of stress on poor people, and I understand where people are mad because they can't deal with the extra $100 a month or whatever.
And they can't afford to live near their job.
Right. I mean, I live far from my job.
I know.
Just so you guys know, here's a heads up. I spent $400 on gas last month. I spent $400 on fuel driving back and forth for work.
Mm-hmm.
To all the places that I got to drive to for work. So trust me when I say I feel it because I track all of my fuel purchases.
And
spent last month was
$35 last month on fuel.
Right. So, like, I feel it and I understand it, and I can go back month to month and I can look at it because I have a specific account that I take all the money out of. It's not like I'm some sort of math wizard or something.
Right.
I have an account that I spend fuel from, and I can go look at it. You know, but the reality is that, like, most people aren't interfacing in a way that would affect their life in any kind of facility, right? In any kind of, like, honest, oh, there's no fish this year, I guess we starve to death.
Right.
Right? Which would have, at one point in time, in the area where we live, if the salmon didn't come, somebody would have just perished because they wouldn't have had enough food to get through the winter, right?
Right.
We're not interfacing with it that way. Big giant problems that are happening seem like a Twitter feed headline,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Australia was on fire, not last year, the year before, right?
I think they were on fire last year, at least a little bit.
To the degree it's difficult to remember when it happened, right? You're
right.
like, was it last year or the year before? I don't know. COVID's
but when
crazy.
was the whole continent on fire?
Was it 2020 or was it 2021?
2019? I feel like they weren't all shut down at the time.
Must have been 2019. I don't even know. But, you know, and that's kind of one of the things that I'm trying to relay to the average fish keeper. Like, Alec the Nice has been posting all sorts of weird stuff all over the place. I don't know if they're just a pure propagandist or maybe they're a bot. I don't know. Says, I wrote to my senator today to vote down the Lacey Amendment to the Competes Act, which is great. I would like to see people be politically motivated in things that I think would realistically affect them. From the standpoint of most fish keepers I know go to the store and they see what's available. They look around at the tanks, they see what's available, and they buy something while they're there. And I can say this from a retail standpoint. I've never sold anything at Aquarium Co-op, so just chill for a minute. I used to sell fish before that.
Right. Different store.
Different store. To remain nameless. But 90% of the people that came in just came in to look around what was there and then make a decision on, like, how much money they had to spend is basically what it boiled down to. And we even got to the point where we ran sort of a game on the customers because we had an excess of coral, right? We had a lot of corals at this store. We sold a lot of saltwater stuff. And a lot of our big ticket corals weren't selling because they're expensive. And that's basically the only reason they weren't selling. It's not that people didn't want them. It's that they couldn't justify spending $200 on them, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we did is that we took, and if you've ever been to a saltwater store, you'll probably know what I'm talking about because it's pretty common these days. These are the $10 corals, these are the $20 corals, and these are the $30 corals, right? So we would take a $200 coral and cut it up, right, into like probably 20 fragments, and put them on a plug and sell them as a $30 coral, and we would sell it out in a day, because people would come in and they would just spend $30 on a coral, period, because they're like, yeah, I'll spend $30. That's fine. But $200, whoa, that's way too much of a commitment, right? But they'll spend $200 on little pieces of the same coral.
Is that like having this much Anubias nana petite versus this much Anubias nana petite?
Yep. That's pretty much what it boils down to. I got a bunch of little tiny ones. for $8, or you could buy this big one for $65, you know,
Right.
and then, but people won't buy the big one, you know.
Right.
So, you know, one of the reasons I just go, like, most of the people that are buying fish aren't buying some kind of weird rainbow fish that is because I've heard a lot of people say, oh, rainbow fish will be outlawed. And you're like, well, by what metric? Like, why? Why would they be outlawed? Oh, because they haven't been described. Okay, so anything that hasn't been described is going to be outlawed? Is that your interpretation? And the interpretation is, yeah, because, look, it transfers this from a black list to a white list. And now there's a white list, and it's got to be on the white list, otherwise you won't be able to import it. Okay, well, guess what? If somebody wants to import that fish, what is going to make it available? Identifying the fish, identifying the potential impact, doing all of those things that you kind of should probably do before you import an item anyhow?
Yeah.
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah.
Since I haven't had a chance to go through much of it, do they? Because I know that there's some money that in the bill to do the identification, correct?
Yep, $150 million a year.
How is that allocated? Does it say? I mean, is it one of those that there may be an actual opportunity for importers to go, hey, you know what? Now I can go for a grant and get this money and hire people to actually do this, and maybe we can identify new species?
Well, I think one of the things that people are kind of confused about is actually how our government operates, right? You know, the House proposes an appropriation of a bill, right? They go, okay, we're going to write out the bill. Here's the stuff in it. All that specific stuff gets outlined later on once the money is appropriated in order to institute this stuff. Within there, it gives it a year with public comment to be able to establish these minimum numbers that, A, if this fish already exists in X amount of numbers, which has not been designated yet, because the House doesn't do that.
Right.
Right?
They wanted to delegate that to the Secretary of the Interior, which
Right.
we hope that person, Deb Hageland, will be using a panel of scientists maybe to help.
Well, here's the thing. The Secretary of the Interior isn't a lifelong appointed position.
I know.
It's
That's
the
what I mean.
current one that's there now. So even if this does pass now, it wouldn't even get instituted until 2023, which would give another year of public comment in order to establish that. Because it literally does designate that we have a year of public comment, which at that time, the average person would be able to lobby for the specific interest that they have, whether it be rainbow fish or guppies or this or that or the other thing. Right. Now, one of the examples, which is unfortunate, is that it does highlight in the bill that fish and reptiles and what else? Fish, reptiles,
Birds, mammals that are not dogs and cats or common farm animals.
Or common farm animals, yeah. That are that are already being traded within the hobby, right? Are already approved by that standard in the bill. Is that if these animals are already being traded at high volume, they will already be whitelisted. So I'm not really 100% sure like why people are so outraged by the fact that there'll be a whitelist, because once this gets instituted, the current fish list that you have right now is going to be the whitelist, right? Because you're already trading in those, you know, those reptiles, those fish, those birds, and any mammals that are not designated as farm animals, right? Yeah. Like it's one of those things. Like, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I'm not on a seat. I'm not on any of that stuff, right? But the assumption that people have that there's some kind of malice ahead of time is what's really troubling to me. And it really makes me wonder when I read a comment from somebody that is like initially ascribing malice from, air quote, the government, right? Which, by the way, the government is comprised of U.S. citizens, so I'm not exactly sure who these like suspicious characters are that are like maliciously trying to ruin the hobby or whatever.
It's the lizard people.
I guess it's the lizard people. I guess we have to talk about
But then we
flat
can't
Earth
import them anymore
the Anunnaki. Do we need to talk about the Anunnaki
because
guys?
they're lizards.
Lizard
They're
people.
undescribed.
Lizard people living in volcanoes. Oh my God, volcanoes.
Undescribed.
Volcanoes
Lizard
are canceled, bro. Volcanoes are canceled. Canceled. Yeah. The aquarium zone says here in Colorado we're still dealing with the beetle kill. They're now pulling low threat inmates out to help clean up. Yep. Got to get those state employees.
Yay.
What do they call them? Indentured servants? I think that's what they call them. Not a great system.
Yeah. It's not my favorite system, but yep. That's all I got to say about that.
But yep. Are you saying
that's
that
a thing that's happening?
Are you saying that you're a big fan or no? Are you not a fan of the American prison and industrial complex?
Weirdly, no.
Bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
Trumpers would like to tell you now that
That I don't believe in the rule of law or
No,
law and order.
that the insurrectionists are patriots, and Trump's going to pardon them when he gets back.
Well.
Because the rule of law doesn't matter now to them anymore,
Mm.
even though those guys broke the law.
Well, I believe in law and order. Ba-bum.
And Reagan, the actor. The country western actor. I don't know where in Texas you don't have to wear a helmet on a motorcycle if you're over 21. Oh, I don't know how here in Texas you don't have to wear a helmet on a motorcycle if you're over 21. That's the weird thing. That was the default law before. Mm-hmm. So until you actually implement a law, right, which is sort of the reason why expanding the Lacey Act is fairly important at this point, because that landmark ruling that happened with U.S. Ark, those guys that are funded by the way, like ZoomEd.
Yeah.
They went in and fought in court and won, which, okay, that's great that they won, that the federal government wasn't allowed to regulate the shipping of animals over state lines, which is great for those guys, I guess, because then you can keep shipping ball pythons or snakes or whatever to wherever, right? And somebody had posted a video, and they said, so people in Alaska... Right, so this is their whole hyperbolic like argument, right? Was like, so people in Alaska shouldn't be able to keep animals that would get out in Florida and then exist in Florida. And it's like, hey man, are you American? Is that an American flag up on your wall in the background of your video because you want to show us how much of a patriot you are? Are you not concerned about the well-being of Floridians because they live 3,000 miles away, or what? Or what's the deal?
Is it 3,000 miles?
From here?
No, from Alaska.
It might be farther. It might be 5,000 miles. Do you want me to look it up?
No.
No? Let's go
Specifically, Anchorage, yeah.
to Miami.
Because I don't want to go all the way down the coast of...
We go to Miami. How many miles? Oh, distance. It's right there. Let's see. Shortest distance airline between Anchorage and Miami is 4,000 miles. So Anchorage is pretty south, though.
Yeah. But at least it's a big city. ish.
Have you been there?
No, but
Yeah.
I really want to go.
It's got big city problems. So
Does it?
no,
Oh,
not really.
I kind of figured. I always kind of figured Anchorage would be like.
The traffic jam in Anchorage is like the lights red.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just figured that Anchorage would be like the town that my mom grew up in, Fosston, Minnesota, which is way up in northern Minnesota on the border by the Red River. Yeah.
I will say I was looking at the flight path that the airplane would have to go to encompass that shorter flight path. You would think it was like a line that looked like this, like whoop. Nope, it was all which is weird because flat Earth, right?
Right?
Lizard people living in volcanoes. You know. Zip's still here with us. What else do we want to ask him? He's in Florida.
I don't know. I want to ask him if he ever goes out dip netting yet.
You can't see him.
I didn't last year, but I'm getting ready to when it gets a little warmer.
How warm is it there today?
It's pretty warm. I'm in shorts and shirt, but it's cool enough that I wouldn't necessarily want to go running around, half wet.
It's funny. Let's see. Hey, you don't talk about your serious issues in this country. Get back to the Lacey Act. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks. Thanks, bro. Let's see here. Well, we didn't get any super chats or new members today.
Well,
and
no.
people didn't go too irate in the chat, which I'm also kind of
No, we just had like a
surprised
few
by.
goofy comments.
Yeah, a few goofy comments, which is naturally going to happen.
Right.
But hey, guys, one thing I wanted to talk about today while Alyssa was here is you guys don't leave enough comments on my videos. You got to leave more comments. And you got to share them out on Reddit or whatever.
On Reddit.
I posted the evidence of what happens when people share out my videos. So, like, Monday's live stream, like, people were all, like, a little pissy about this, that, or the other thing. And it got shared out at a bunch of external websites like Reddit and whatnot. And it was like, oh, it did way better. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, that's basically what it boils down to right there. As Wesley said earlier this week, y'all could just share out an old video if you want. And you never know. You never know.
That's true.
You never know. Never, never, never. Aquarium Zone asks, how are the iguanas? Zip, how are the iguanas doing down there? Are they even supposed to be from there?
No. From what I've read, and I haven't looked at recently, I don't think there's much of an economic impact from them. They seem to be pretty benign that way, but they're a nuisance. They poop everywhere. It's like having big green flightless Canadian geese all year long, just pooping everywhere.
Just pooping constantly?
Aren't they herbivores?
So it's a poop
They are.
issue.
They are.
Yeah.
But so they'll go into people's gardens and, help themselves and poop all over their yard. And so people, as you can understand, don't particularly care for that.
I'm not particularly fond of random animals just pooping up my yard and eating all my stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird that I'm not a fan of that. Right?
I mean, I got kind of irritated at the rodentia of my neighborhood deciding that really they were going to try all of my strawberries, but only like one bite from each.
Oh, that's a real nightmare.
I'm like, just finish one strawberry.
They're like, yeah, but that somebody already bit that one, so I don't want it. Oh my God, S has tested the super chat button with the poop emoji. I didn't even realize that there is a poop emoji. What's it called? Does it have a name?
I don't know. It's just the poop emoji.
You used to be able to like hover over it and get the name of the poop emoji. Yeah. Oh, we got. Oh, that's right. We have our goofy our goal here. So yeah, we were supposed to get to what were we supposed to get to today? $125,732, which I guess now our total running is $599.
Nice.
We carried over from the last show.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I mean, we carried over from the last show because we don't want to look like pitiful failures on YouTube, right?
I just, you know what? I feel like that's just a recipe for getting really depressed.
Oh my God, are we gonna get super depressed? Let's not get super
And then
depressed.
we can identify as dead. And that's a callback.
It's super funny. Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know where this whole this whole pronoun debate has come from. Obviously, Jordan Peterson and little baby brain Ben Shapiro have been promoting it for a really long time. That like
That guy in his tiny face.
like it's very much nonsensical that this whole situation with things like that took hold, and those guys were able to take oil billionaires' money and turn it into a gigantic grift, where they go around and debate like college students or something. You know, it's pretty pitiful. It's a really pitiful situation in the fact that somebody identifies a certain way, and your knee-jerk reaction is to just like criticize it.
Yeah.
Which is funny because in some people's minds, they have been sold this bill of goods from like Candace Owens and Shapiro and Jordan Peterson that the air quote the left, right, is being intolerant of other people, right? Which is weird because generally speaking, liberals and leftist people have always been wildly more accepting of other cultures. And,
Well, we have to be more tolerant of their
designations and
hatred of things.
right. And it's a weird messaging. It's a really weird messaging that has been kind of crafted and like created into the world, which is just odd. It's very odd to me. But you know, here we are, like so far down the road that you know, like Joe Rogan thinks he's being canceled, right? Or they claim that Rogan's being canceled because Neil Young doesn't want to have his music on a platform with him anymore,
Right.
which is literally Neil Young's freedom of speech to say that I don't want to be speaking in a space where this is going on. And that's it. All he did was eliminate himself and his art from the situation. He didn't say Joe Rogan can't, you know, verbally express whatever it is that he wants to express. He said, I don't want to be contributing to that space, right? Contributing to promoting that space. That's it.
Yep.
And
that's
suddenly he's canceled Joe Rogan. Okay, he doesn't want to
Well,
be there anymore.
Rogan's still freaking there.
Yeah. And you're like,
so,
you know, and it's kind of funny because, you know, Rogan came out and like apologized, and now everybody's attacking. Now all of Rogan's fans are attacking him because he apologized. And you're like, how bizarre is this? Where you can't even have like a simple interaction when if you sit down and go like, look, I'm 41 years old, right? The entirety of my life has been trying to deal and live within a world where this large group of people says you can't say shit on the airwaves, right? You can't have boobies on TV, right? But like you can't say shit and have some boobies on TV, but you can watch somebody get shot with a machine gun to the chest
100,000 times.
over and over and over again at 8:00 at night, on a murder mystery propaganda show, that's fine.
Yeah.
But you can't say shit or boobies because I guess you're some kind of puritanical crazy nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a big fan of George Carlin. He said it way better and more articulately than I ever have.
Mm-hmm.
I probably ever will. So I think if people really wanted to understand like the deep criticism of this weird cultural affectation that has happened in the United States for so long, and then to suddenly have, you know, Prager University come out and be like, the liberals are trying to silence the Bible. And it's like, you're allowed to read the Bible. You could print the Bible. You could do whatever you want. Like, that's fine. And yet, these are the exact same people that will stand out on a street corner screaming at people, yelling at people, enacting violence on people because they happen to be gay.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What? You know, and then here we are in 2022 where those exact same people come out and be like, I've always been super accepting of people's sexuality or whatever. Like, what are you talking about? How is that even remotely true? And then Shapiro will come out. Facts don't care about your feelings. I'm going to talk really, really fast. In which, if you slow down what he's talking about, you start to realize it's garbled nonsense.
Right.
And almost always a misinterpretation of what has actually happened. Right. Which is super illustrated whenever he goes up and gets interviewed by somebody who pushes back on him, who actually is educated and knowledgeable of the events that happen, and then he just takes his microphone off and leaves. Right?
Well, that's not fun for him.
Yeah.
So he canceled himself.
He canceled himself. He must have been canceled, I guess. Oh, my God. There's an elephant in the room, guys. There's an elephant in the room. The Aquarium Zone has become a member. It turns out the member button does work.
Nice.
S tested the super chat button.
He turned it into a super chat
and the Aquarium
button.
Zone has tested the join button.
We now know that the buttons both work.
These buttons both work.
And we super appreciate it.
Actually, yeah. If anybody, if you guys feel like you want to sponsor me to become one of the characters that can push back against people like Ben Shapiro, we're going to need more members. That's basically all it's going to come down to, is that
It's true. You're not big enough, man.
there's like 10 million of them and like only 73 of us,
Yeah.
plus 138 patrons. I can't math that. What is it? 221?
200 and
41?
11?
11?
211.
Oh my God, I had an extra 10 in there.
You did. That's
Hey.
okay.
We did get to 1,000 first. And we'll figure it out after that. But anyhow, thanks for becoming a member. I very much appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know. Like, this whole topic has been extraordinarily divisive for a lot of people. And the thing that I want to try to tell people is, like, first off, you don't have a crystal ball. You don't know the future,
Nope.
right? If people like Alex and other YouTube creators have been wildly knee-jerk about what is going on. I even saw like some other fish tuber guy I've never seen before pop up. Somebody sent me the video earlier today. I've never seen the guy before, like 70,000 subs. This is like a sizable channel, but I've never seen him before. But his reaction was 100%. Was 100% in the like, oh, this is just negative just because it's bad. Like, guys, it's bad because it's bad. And you're like, well, why are you saying it's bad? Like, you know, I'm not about to sit down with a YouTuber and ask them the epistemology of their ascription of the word bad, right? To try and figure out like what they define every avenue of something that is bad, but I keep seeing these videos that are people that are like, this is going to be bad. It's going to destroy the hobby. And like, how is it going to destroy the hobby? Because it's bad and it's going to destroy the hobby. And you're like, that is not an explanation, you know? And you go like, well, I'm not going to be, I'm like burping today. I don't know what my deal is. I'm hungry, I think. My stomach's been growling.
Yeah, I know. I can
Yeah,
hear
you
it
can
from
hear
all
it.
the way over
Yeah.
here.
I'm like, what's going on with this guy? I'm hungry.
It's like a demon in his stomach.
But like we literally get to the point where I see all these videos and they go, it's just bad. The authoritarian government's going to get you. And you're like, but what are you talking about? At what point, you know, at what point has the American government ever come and got you? I want to know. I really want to know. Because at certain points in time, yes, I'm sure that the American government has brought probably a fine, or you've had to pay some taxes, or you've had to pay for permits or licensing or this or that or the other thing. But I can never get an answer from most of those people that's like, what percentage is it supposed to be applied
Yeah.
versus what you're paying now? And it's always zero. So the answer is always zero. So it's like, so you just don't want to be a contributing member of society then? And it's like, no, I just want to keep everything for myself. And it's like, yeah, so like I said, you don't want to be a member of society, contributing member of society, right?
Right.
No, I'm going to keep everything. I made it myself. It's mine. Like, well, did you build the road that brought the infrastructure here, or that brought whatever supplies you needed to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Have you built a power plant that creates the energy for the building that you run? Do you clean the water that comes into your building? Like, no, we're all a part of society. And if somebody has a real a real definable action that they could say would improve something that's going on, I would love to hear it. But I'm not hearing it from any of these opponents of this legislation specifically. All I'm hearing from people is it's bad because it's legislation. That's it. It's just, it's bad because of what it is. And you're like,
I don't know. I think it's mostly fear.
yeah,
Fear of the unknown.
right.
And yeah, and nobody wants to be just like sitting there waiting for like a year and a half trying to figure out what, like,
Right.
it's like if you're like, you're in grade school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you messed something up, and then your teacher called your parents or something like that, and you're like, oh, when I get home,
Right.
I might get in trouble, but I don't know what kind of trouble. And so then you gotta wait like all day, and you get home and you're like, your mom's out at the store or something like
Right.
that, so you're just like home, and you just gotta wait. And then your mom gets home, it doesn't even say anything, and you have to wait for your dad to get home because you're like, oh crap, we gotta wait for dad to get home, and you don't even know if it's gonna be like a thing. And you're just sitting there and stewing in fear all day and just like hiding in your room, maybe trying to hide under the bed or something like that.
Right.
And you just don't know what's going to happen. And just waiting for the punishment that might or might not happen. And that is not a cool spot to be in. And I think that's what people are reacting to.
Right. And, you know, like one of the big arguments that I've had with a lot of Americans is that I've heard from a lot of Americans that they want to buy American made.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there's criticisms levied against all sorts of people that, oh, all you do is sell Chinese goods. And it's like, okay, who makes it in America?
Right.
And they go, well, somebody does. No, tell me who makes it in America, and I'll buy it from them. And they go, well, I don't know. Okay. Nobody knows who's made it in America because no one is making that thing in America. We can't buy it from America. You can't buy American made. Like injection molded foam. I know that I've heard Corey talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours on his live streams about foam filter pads and stuff like that, right? No one does it in the States.
Yeah.
No one does it here. No one makes that foam in the United States. So you want to buy filter material for your aquarium. No one makes it in the U.S. It's impossible to buy it because no one makes it here. So at what point in time can you levy these criticisms, right, just out into space and criticize somebody when there's an unavailability for them to change to meet whatever metrics that you've decided would make you happy?
Right.
Right? Like, if Vicky just decided tomorrow that I needed to be 7 feet tall, like, well, you're not meeting my standards. You're not 7 feet tall, so I don't want to be your spouse anymore. Like, what? How am I supposed to meet that? What?
Go
Like, how am I
back to
supposed
the
do
early
that?
2000s and get some platform boots and just wear them
And just wear them forever.
all the time.
Forever. She would know.
You
But-
just gotta wear big pants over them.
So,
Get those jinkos.
but like, to my point is that I've seen so many people that want to buy American made. Well, why aren't you buying American bred fish? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why not? Because there's not very many people doing it in the United States.
Right.
Because there's really not an incentive for anybody to do it in the United States because
Right.
most of it's shipped in from overseas.
Because you can't compete with the prices that you can get from importing
Right.
it for like
And you
pennies on the
certainly-
dollar.
And you certainly can't compete with somebody who's illegally fishing and capturing that fish
mm-hmm.
and sending it over,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Poisoning all the autos and
yeah. And I've talked about the auto sinkless till I was like blue in the face. And I just got to the point where I just basically didn't want to talk about it anymore
right.
because so many people would just get just pissed at me, And it's like there are videos of it online of the actual collecting of the auto sinkless and how they do it. You can go look them up if you want. They're not the easiest thing to find, but you can go look them up.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that they do is they poison the river in order to get all of the auto sinkless to go into an estuary, and they puts them in sort of not a hibernation mode or whatever, but it really puts them in the, oh my God, we got to get in here. They go into an inlet and they go in there and they just net them out 5,000 to 10,000 at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And they put them directly into a bag. They put them into a box. They put a label on it and they ship them over to get them into the States. Because then once they're in the States, now you can ship them anywhere in the United States. Because if you're the person on the other end, once you have them here, there's no regulation going from state to state whether or not you just bought some illegally harvested fish, right? Because there's no documentation that's following them. There's no regulation that could stop people from sending them from state to state. There's no way for anybody to really intervene, right? And my point is that like people aren't incentivized to compete with a fish that is being sold for 9 cents to the store,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't breed that fish to compete in that marketplace, right?
The food is. I mean, just the food is expensive. Like I'm going
Just
tomorrow.
the water,
Just the water too.
just the aquariums,
yeah.
the whatever body of water you're going to keep them in.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no way to bring it to scale
Yeah.
where you can actually compete in that marketplace, right?
The initial breeding colony is
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah. I mean, I got to bring in 5,000 fish, and half of them are going to die for sure because they're all poisoned.
I mean, some of
Yeah.
my fish, I had to sell 60 of them just to make back the initial buyback
Right.
on it. And I'm like, all right.
And, like, what, if people aren't going to be able to check up on this stuff and know what's going on, just hoping that people will, like, do the right thing, even when there's not even a possibility to do the right thing.
Mhm.
It's like you can't levy a criticism on somebody that, like, you didn't buy American made. Well, nobody makes it in America.
Right.
Okay, so I guess I'm a bad person now because I didn't buy the thing American made when that's not even available,
Yeah.
right? Well, it's like I want to buy locally bred fish. There's not that many people that are doing it because
Mhm.
there's not a market.
Right.
Because even if you're competing with retail prices, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the incentive for somebody to buy your fish or whatever? You're not a store,
Right.
So you got to go open a store, which that's going to cost a bunch of money.
Right.
So, you know, like,
which turns it into, well, I know a guy who knows a guy who
Right.
can get you in contact with this person, and they have this specific kind of fish that you can buy from them.
right.
And then you go, oh, does that person also have this kind of fish? It's like, no, man, no. For that, you need to find this person who knows that guy,
Right.
who knows this gal.
You know, and it's
Yeah.
like I've heard it. I've heard those talking points levied against so many companies, and yes, I've heard it also levied against Corey. I've heard it levied against Rob from Flip. I've heard it against Dustin from. I don't even know what is his business. I don't know. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I've heard it pretty much across the board. That's all I'm saying. And you know, to the point of like, how are somebody supposed to meet these impossibly set standards that don't you can't meet it, right? And it's like the reality is that people are just reacting out of anger, right? And like you said, fear of the unknown, or fear of whatever, or fear of the inability to actually meet the standard that they think should exist,
Right.
right? But you know, a lot of the aquarium plant companies that I know that were even growing plants in the States, like a lot of them relocated out of country because it was like so much cheaper to just grow stuff in Guatemala and then just ship it. Like, because, you can do everything for pennies on the dollar and then just ship it into the States and make U.S. money that's the same wholesale price that you were making from the States.
Yep.
You know, time and time again, I've been asked, like, why don't I grow plants and sell plants in the United States? Because even if I was selling plants at retail prices to people, I would go under.
Yeah.
Because I know how much it costs to grow, say, 10,000 Anubias or whatever, right? Then I got to sell them to people for $9 a piece or something, right? And it's like, okay, I've got 10,000 Anubias. I sold them for $9 a piece. Now I've got to grow 10,000 again. I got to pay taxes on that. I got to pay business. I got to pay overhead costs. And I'm basically going to come out to being a guy who makes $5,000 a year in a country that is essentially the bare minimum around in the United States nowadays is like 38 grand is pretty much the median. Like, that's the median now. I mean, they just released the new apartment prices is $1,300 a month is like the median apartment price all across the United States. So you got to have $1,300 US just to live inside a building that you don't own, no ownership of it or anything like that, just to rent it, right? And you know, it's one of those like it's one of those really like precarious situations that like unless some kind of regulation will motivate some kind of change, it's just never going to happen because there's no reason for any of these companies to make a change or invest in the country that we're in now. And we know that over the last 40 years, hold on, fly out to Detroit and ask them how it went down. Ask them how it went down, right? When there was an opportunity for the United States to make a decision on whether or not they wanted cheap goods or they wanted goods to be produced in the United States, they chose the cheap goods, right?
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
You can't just say, no, that didn't happen, because it did. That's what happened. Slowly but surely, bit by bit by bit, things were shipped overseas to be produced overseas, and it's because of the regulation that was all stripped away in the 80s. And people go like, you can't just blame Reagan for everything. I'm not blaming Reagan for everything. I'm blaming Reagan for what he actually did.
Yeah.
And what he actually was involved in and what he actually promoted. And we're seeing the effect of that now. And if we don't implement regulation in order to promote what it is that we want to do here in the United States, it's going to continue to be done not in the United States. Okay? Now, I am a fan of bringing up the quality of life that is happening overseas.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that. And if we don't have regulation in place, we're not going to be able to improve the lives of the people that we're supposedly helping out by buying products from them and stuff, right? Those big unilateral multi-country trade agreements and all that stuff are not going to be effective if they're toothless, right? If there's no regulation, if there's no inspectors on the ground here, if there's no scientific infrastructure in order to identify the fish and things that are coming in, how are we supposed to help people in other countries that are being taken advantage of from our position here, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we can do in order to do that is to endorse positive regulation that will help enforce what we all want enforced, right? We don't want our waterways destroyed. We don't want our environment destroyed. We don't want nothing but chickens outside all of the time, 100% of the time, right? We don't want 900,000 chickens in our yard. We want like 20. It's fine. But they're gated up. They can't get out.
Right.
You know, and it's one of those things that where we go, oh, we should lead by example, right?
Yeah. I mean, we try. Hopefully we don't just lead with guns and blowing other people up.
Right. And we don't want to do that.
No.
No one's a fan of that. I know somebody posted in the chat earlier today just how worrisome it is with how many troops are building up on the Russia and Ukraine border. Yeah, I mean, that's the fear of unknown, is that, in my mind, is that rarely have we ever seen that type of interaction work out where it was good, you know? It always just ended up in lots of civilians not making it, and I'm not a fan of that. I'm a fan of being able to go to other countries and in a realistic way, talking to people on the ground face to face and going, yeah, I'm an American. And they go, oh, cool. Right on. What's America like? And you go, oh, yeah, you know, blah, blah, blah. As opposed to talking to people face to face and go, yeah, well, my uncle died because of America and I don't like you at all, just because of that. And I go, I didn't, you know, and why would anybody accept my excuse of like, well, I didn't vote for that or whatever? They don't, it doesn't matter, you know? And, you know, to a more like even more personal level than that, you know, some of the guys like this last year when we were in Peru, guys on the boat, a lot of the workers that are on the boat are just Peruvian guys. There's nothing. I mean, they seem to be really good guys. I only known them for like 5 days or something, right? And they seem to be really good guys. One of the guys that we talked to, we were like, man, it would be cool if you could come visit the States someday. And his reaction was, that's a life dream. That's like, whoa, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's like oh man, that's like an amazing dream to be able to visit the United States, right? And I would like more interactions like that. More interactions like that would be able to continue in the future, as opposed to having more interactions with people that like, you bombed my family when I was a kid. And it'd be like, yeah, I don't really know how to address that with somebody that's gone through like this like wild traumatic experience when they were 5, that the buildings exploded.
Right.
You know, like, what do you do? What do you do in that, you know?
Right.
Upfunk Set List says, does the Lacey Act have an impact on how people collect autos? It has more to do with, as I kind of explained earlier, so maybe you're going to have to go back and listen. I was talking about the auto sync lists and how they were being collected. It's probably not going to directly affect an immediate change, but when the American marketplace evaporates because people are doing something in that real ineffective manner, right? Or people are doing something in a really like illegal manner like that. It's illegal to do that now. There's no way for it to be tracked or prosecuted. That's the big issue, is that once it lands stateside, right? And say you landed in California, it's in. Now it's in. That's it. It's like as if all drugs, as long as you got them into the States, they just became legal after that, right? But right now, there's not enough inspectors and stuff working, from the federal level to be able to see what is going on and what's coming in. And if something was illegally collected in, say, Mexico, we don't have any kind of like real agreement or real lasting methodology of prosecuting people that are bringing that stuff in. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big part of the implementation here is that, autosynclus would be legal to import, but if these have been illegally harvested in Ecuador, right? Right now, there's no follow-up that you could do. There's nothing you could do to follow up on there's nothing that you could do right now from the federal standpoint to go like we don't want to let this continue to happen, which in my opinion is a big deal. It's like 3:30. We got to stop talking. We got to go. Hey, we got to go. Jake Vargo became a member. Oh my God, we have 2 members today.
That's amazing.
We need 2 members. We need more members. I don't know. I don't have a better way to put it. Here's a commercial for the channel. Hey, man, if you like content and me aquascaping and all that kind of stuff, we need more members and more patrons. That's just basically what it comes down to. There's a limited amount of hours in the week, and if you want me to dedicate more hours to YouTube, you guys got to like tell me to do that.
And sometimes I'm here too.
I just went into this long diatribe about how you have to make enough money to live in the United States. I can't change that. I can't change that fact. I have to pay bills. It just, I don't know how to escape it. I don't know how to escape. We're done talking about it, but the secret history wants it. Isn't there the cities, the Lacey Endangered Species Act, whatever state level laws exist that can be enforced? Some animals, lots of laws, some that's 0. Yes. Counting on each state to enact all sorts of specific fish related, reptile related, all of these laws is ridiculous and stupid. And it's stupid to actually describe that way. And I'm literally saying that as an insult. I'm saying it's stupid to go, states' rights. It's idiotic. Just go put a Confederate flag on your car and drive around because of states' rights. Yeah, because that's what you're saying. That's basically what you're saying. And it's real dumb. And I'm saying it to be mean. Yes, I am intentionally being mean right now. But yeah, it's dumb to even say that. And by the way, like, what's Wyoming supposed to do? What is Colorado supposed to do? What is North Dakota, South Carolina, North Carolina? What are every single state is supposed to have some funded specific thing to be able to check on all this stuff? Or are the federal import sites where the federal people are already working, where the federal agents are already representation are representation on the ground? Are those the people that are already there working? Should we fund them to be able to check what is coming in at the border? Should we fund those guys? Should we fund them more and give them more ability to stop stuff from coming in that isn't supposed to come in because it's been illegally fished? What are we supposed to do here? States' rights? That's the plan? Get out of here. Get out of here with that. And yeah, I'm intentionally being mean right now. So if anybody wants to go, don't be mean, I'm literally being mean. That is what's happening. Anyhow, end of the show. We've been here for 2.5 hours. I want to thank Alyssa. High fives. High fives for being here. Thanks for coming out. I always love it. Hopefully next week we can just talk about bristlenose or whatever. We don't have to talk about stupid bills.
Or even my scarlet batis that I got to watch breed yesterday.
Yeah, no doubt. I want to come over and take pictures of them.
That would be so amazing because
Yeah.
my pictures were dumb.
You posted that. You were like, oh my god, we should have better pictures. It's like, well, yeah. Anyhow, yeah. So we've been here for 2.5 hours. Alyssa came over. She's normally here on Fridays
Yeah.
ish or whatever until I move, and then we'll figure out a different thing.
We'll I don't know, something.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But anyhow, that's the end of the show today. I want to say thanks to Jake Vargo and Largemouth Bass and Aquarium Zone NS for memberships and super chats.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
You got anything you want to say?
Apparently, scarlet bats are egg scatterers. I didn't know that. Okay,
They are.
the end.
They are.